going to start. Okay, in 1941, in the context of a Pan-Americanist project and the production of World War II era propaganda, Walt Disney, with the support of the US government, organized a trip around Latin America in order to learn about different cultural aspects of Latin American countries. The journey lasted 10 weeks and was made with a team of 18 people, including Disney, his wife, and a professional team of writers, artists, managers, technicians, and of course, a musician, Charles Walcott. There's Walcott. The materials and experiences inspired the documentary South of the Border, and two animated films, Saludos Amigos and The Three Caballeros. Chile was one stop on this journey, and the itinerary of official activities was intended to offer Walt Disney, from the established criteria, different aspects of traditional Chilean culture. Of course, the traditional Chilean music showed to him was cueca, considered by law a national dance. Disney and his team had opportunity to hear and dance cueca during a visit to a property near to La Laguna de Aculeo. However, the first official person to talk about Chilean music for Disney's project was the composer Domingo Santa Cruz, then Dean of the Facultad de Artes of the Universidad de Chile and a key figure in the musical institutionality of the country. The meeting was held at Hotel Carrera, an elegant place next to the government house used for diplomatic and official activities. The participants of this meeting were Santa Cruz, we are going to see Santa Cruz there, his collaborator and future wife Filomena Salas, and Disney's manager John C. Rose. We have only a few documents that register this encounter, but this gives us only little details about the conversation itself. Consequently, what I will try to do in this paper is to use this scene to imagine the conversation between Santa Cruz, Salas, and Disney's manager, based on two questions. What concept of Chilean music could have been offered to the Disney project? And what aspects of a supposed Chilean music style could have been interesting for Disney and the American culture industry? Well, at the time of Disney's visit, Domingo Santa Cruz's overall project for Chilean music was mostly consolidated. This project signaled an abrupt change, which we can briefly describe in the following points. A new paradigm in the training of musicians, from a conservatory model to a university training attempt. The founding of numerous institutions, such as the Facultad de Bellas Artes in 1929, Orquesta Sinfónica de Chile, 1941, Instituto de Extensión Musical, the same year, among others. Third, the refundational discourse, the consolidation of this discourse and the invisibilization of the previous musical activity. And finally, and perhaps the most importantly for the topic of this conference, an abrupt change in the project of identity for music composed in Chile, based on an idealized vision of German Romanticism, with Richard Wagner as a main reference and inspiration. Obviously, the folklore and popular manifestation were not considered worthy. Regarding this last point, an illustrative example of this ideal is a short essay that Alfonso Lenk, entitled On Chilean Musical Art, published in 1927 in Marcias, arguably the first important journal of the Santa Cruz project. Basically, this paper exposed Lenk's concept of a national music for Chile, based in the exclusion of the popular folklore and the exaltation of German music. I will show you just two paragraphs of this paper. This is the first one. I'm going to translate here. In Germany, the music of Bach, Beethoven, and Wagner, to name only the foremost examples, represents the nobility and depth of the German soul, its love for nature, the deep romanticism that characterizes it. It is rare to find elements of popular folklore in these authors, and yet their music is the most accurate representation of the German soul. Later, Lenk says, the folklore of the Germanic and Saxon people, this is worst, is of better quality, due to the degree of this infiltration by a religious spirit, since the liturgical chorale has left in the depth of the souls the memory, the lost notes of an uplifting song. Okay, if we suppose that this was the idea of Chilean music presented to Disney, it's obvious that the offer not was too attractive according to the codes of American mass media. Since this was the ideal that shaped music composition in the period, this was a problem. On the other hand, if we consider that they might have offered instead popular Chilean music to them, we would find that the result would have been very similar. Unlike the cases of Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Peru, Bolivia, or Cuba, I have found just 2 examples of Chilean popular music appreciated by the American culture industry. And the version, as will we hear, suffered a lot of change in rhythm, instrumentation, style, etc. The first example is Chiu Chiu. Yeah, okay, it's a song written by the composer Nicanor Molinare, Rencoret, and it's based on the corrido genre, originally from Mexico. This song was recorded by RCA Victor by Carlos Leffler in voice, and was the first and most important success of Molinare. Okay, let's to hear just a few seconds.
Canta, canta, pajarito, canta, canta tu canción. Dice que la vida es triste y tu cantar me alegra el corazón.
That's the first version of 37. Okay, and 5 years later, but this song was included in a production of an American mainstream film, You Were Never Lovelier, yeah, starring Rita Hayworth and Fred Astaire. In this movie, Chiu Chiu was played by a tropical orchestra directed by Xavier Cugat, with Lina Romay and Miguelito Valdés as vocal soloists. First, I just edited 1 minute, but now I prefer to expose the 2 minutes because I think that is a very illustrative example of this mechanic of exotization of Chilean music. Okay, maybe it's important to say that Xavier Cugat is a Catalan violin player. He studied in Cuba when he was a kid. And after he went to New York, and he was like André Rieu of Latin music in 40s. And so he built the Latin music for mainstream, American mainstream. He's a very key figure. Okay, and returning to the art, no, sorry, I have another example. The second example is outside of my temporal frame, but I will show you because it reaffirms my hypothesis. No? I'm referring to Casamiento de Negros, originally written and recorded by Violeta Parra in 1955. And the song was versioned at the following year with the title Melodía Loca, the Chilean crazy song, by Lex Baxter. Lex Baxter is an icon of orchestrated music of 50s, like a dentist's music of 50s. Okay, this is the original, just a short fragment. Just guitar and voice. And now the version in Les Baxter Orchestra, we are going to hear just a few seconds. While you're hearing, you can read the liner notes. It's a bit psycho. But etc. Repeats constantly. And this is real. I copied from the disc. It's not my invention. Okay, returning to the art music field, after reviewing research projects like that of Carol Hess, we can affirm that in the context of the Pan-Americanist project of the 30s and 40s, the North American expectation for Latin American music always concerned features like nationalism, spirit, rhythmic complexity, and emotionalism. On the other hand, the appreciation of these musics were built around their supposed potential for transgression, their irresistible color, or essentialist categories that would have worked with American audiences, like unmistakable Mexican, genuinely Peruvian, unique, distinctive, or characteristic, constituting a reflection of what historian Ricardo Salvatore calls adjectivization. In this aesthetic and political designation about what was considered Latin American art music for North American audiences, unlike countries like Mexico, Brazil, or Argentina, mainly represented in figures like Chavez, Villalobos, or Ginastera, Chilean art music was not among the favorites, which is symptomatic, considering the positive appreciation of Chile by North American foreign policy. At this point, I would like to think about a few other questions open to discussion. What would have happened if the meeting with Disney manager had occurred with another composer, with another conception of project of identity for Chilean art music? Here I think of names of like Carlos Isamit, Pedro Humberto Allende, or Carlos Lavín. I can add Pablo Garrido. We talked about him yesterday. And their relationship of these authors with sounds expression of traditional cultures, mainly from Mapuche culture. So imagining the meeting in question, replacing Santa Cruz name with Isamit, Allende, or Lavín, would this meeting have constituted a change in the perception of Chilean art music abroad? What forms of exoticism and out-exoticism could have been learned from this experience and affected Chilean composers? Articulating my project with the focus of this conference, in 15 minutes, this presentation has aimed to problematize the official discourse about Chilean art music in the 30s and 40s from the perspective of a composer. understanding in this context the figure of the composer like a key actor for this discourse. No? And consider how this discourse confronted the expectations of the project of American hegemony. I'm not expert in identity, and I'm not a composer. Yet, from my point of view as a teacher, I would like to close this presentation by asking if in the formation of a Chilean composer in Chile, we consider these kinds of identity problems, their history and their influence in the present. I don't know if this is important, but at least it is healthy to think about what we are and what is said about what we are. Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much. We're going to open for a short round of questions. So maybe there's somebody who wants to add something or make a question.
Was too clear.
Well, Martin? Yep. There is another microphone there. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation. Very nice. You mentioned that the meeting between Santa Cruz and the Disney crew was. We don't know many things about that meeting, but what do we know exactly? Can you expand more about? There were
documents?
some documents, some reviews.
Exists an official register of the American government. You know, all the agenda of Disney in Chile. But just that, so it's just I don't know. It's like an agenda. At that time, that activity with these persons, and no more. For Chile, not was an official activity, so we don't have registered about the conversation, the topics. I don't know, and the reason of Santa Cruz in that meeting, and just that. I think one little article in Ecran, a cinema review, was too short, like pictures with Disney with Agustin Edwards, father of that, or Agustin Edwards. And another thing is, sorry, I forgot a little interview of Pablo Garrido to Charles Walcott, the musician of Disney's project, but nothing more. So I have, for that reason, I tried to imagine the conversation and think a lot of things about.
Another question?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I was thinking if you could say more of what you think would have happened if maybe they had, apart from the asking the question, what do you think? Do you think it might have changed in some way, like the perception of Chilean art music in those decades? Like for example, if you compare with the cases of Mexico or Brazil, where the main composers were sort of nationalist, and Chavez and Villalobos, and they used that aesthetic, which didn't happen in Chile. Do you think it would have changed in some way? And
yeah, I think I really don't know. I can't imagine precisely what could have been happening. I don't know, but I think that I think just the obvious answer, is I think that the composer would have remarked maybe the Mapuche topics. You have just a few composers talking or making music about Mapuche things, Mapuche topics, Mapuche resources, but a lot of times that is very, I don't know, it's very superficial. I don't know. It's just a touristic picture about Mapuches. It's like a tun 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 tun. Oh yes, the timpani is doing that. It's Mapuche. It's just a picture. I think that maybe that exaltation of touristic exaltation of Mapuches and another cultures could have been more worked, more promoted. I think maybe could be worse. Could have been worse. I think it's more. Maybe it's better to. We have to thank to Santa Cruz. Maybe I don't know. And that's all. I don't know how. Maybe the cases we can study the cases of Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina. And I think why, for example, and in USA universities in programs of Latin American music, they considered music like estancias, malambo, I don't know, music too rhythmic of Ginastera, for example, and not dodecaphonic music of Ginastera. They wanted rhythm, emotion of Villalobos or nationalism, maybe. So, instead, after in the Cold War era, from present to present, the difference were more remarked. So, nationalism aspects were more remarked, more strong, I think. I don't know if I answered, but
I have another question. In your presentation and in your title, as I mentioned yesterday also, you speak directly about art music.
yeah.
So it is a very polemic topic, and we're going to watch a film about this afterwards. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the main arguments that you could give in favor of using this term, art music?
Yeah, I'm using just in historic way, in historic use of the term, because in this time existed very strong difference between Hollywood production of music and academic or university production of music or classical music. You know, were too remarked. So
in that sense, you would say, at least at the time, art music was a synonym of academic music?
Yeah, academic music.
Would be the same.
I don't know, because I don't know. I didn't study very well the model of education in USA music, but all these official activities with the government were with using the universities like platforms of action. I think Yale, Princeton. I don't know, but a lot of American universities were places to make music, make Latin American music, and make investigation. And that.
In Chile, you worked at the Universidad Alberto Hurtado, right?
Yeah.
And could you tell us a little in what institution inside the university you are working, and maybe also the background of my question is that what has been your experience with your students in relation to this separation from popular music, art music, or these kind of things?
From my experience of director of a career of pedagogy of music, I tried in my lessons and in my project to think the music from problems. You have the problem of identity, problem of what is art, what not, problem of rituality of music, the sound, the sonority of music, more than a chord. Or I'm thinking in first year. So I try to express that idea to think in music from the problems. And after that, if you work in one lesson with Wagner and after with Britney Spears, for me it's not a problem. You can think in problems, and after you decide what music do you think and make. And
your students are the music teachers,
music
school teachers of the
yes.
future in Chile?
I hope, yeah.
Okay, and to end, what would you think that is the main opinion of the students today who are trying to be music teachers about this topic? Do they think there is a clear separation between types of music, or?
I'm 38, and I have a lot of categories: metal, punk, electronic music, avant-garde, etc. They sit in their seats and just listen and just show it to me what they are listening, and can be I don't know, sometimes video, sometimes metal band, sometimes cumbia. I don't know. They have not prejudice. Yes, they are too free to listen music. I try to make my lessons with categories, but after I think that is not too useful. I think they receive conference from composers, from popular musicians, etc. I try to think that.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
A last question, please. The microphone there. And then we will prepare for Martin.
With the example of Violeta Parra, and also the other one of Day2, but especially of the one of Violeta Parra, came to my mind all these reconstruction and reversions of Violeta Parra today with the celebration of her centenary. And I'm wondering, what do you think about what are the boundaries between the authentic music in this kind of authentic between authentic Chilean music or authentic music in this sense, and the exotic or exoticized music? For example, in the case of Violeta Parra, is really striking in a way, putting this music in a. For example, there are, I don't know, or the case also in Day2. What are why that version with this orchestra of Javier Cugat is an exotic version of Day2 and the original is not, or both are, or what do you think about that?
No, I think that the Chilean music is too I don't know, too sobria. I don't know in English. How can it be like so? No, it's not an attractive. The people buys fantasy. If you give, like Edward said when he said in Orientalism, if you give a real history about Persians or about Chinese people, it's too boring for people. People want fantasy, and in history, in movies, and all the things. And if you offer Chilean music, it's not as attractive for this anxiety of spectacle. For that reason, all the versions that you can find of Chilean music outside of Chile suffered a lot of change according to modas, to trends, to consume. And in other case, in the case of Violeta Parra, it's too difficult for me because when you, I don't know, I'm not an expert in Violeta Parra. I know nothing about Violeta Parra, but I think in her trip to France, when she was to France and she took contact. She contacted the composers, real composers, academic composers, and she was a composer in another way, and she was very smart, and she negotiated her product, her creation, with that cause of avant-garde, but showing like a not avant-garde, like a spontaneous art, because she knew that was more easy to sell for survive. I don't know, and the people until now wants to believe that Violeta Parra is just a farmer, that she was very innocent, that she was savage, and no, that's the exotic size, the exotic product. Violeta Parra was an intellectual and creator. She was she's a woman. That is another problem, a big problem. And the lectures of Violeta Parra are multiple, and I don't know. We can discuss with a beer, I think. It's too much time for.
Thank you very much.
I don't want to
Juan
speak
Carlos.
too much. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Juan.